was the summer of 2014, and for my son's bar mitzvah present, just like many Jewish parents, we wanted him to bond with the Holy Land. Oh, it worked perhaps too well. My husband had stayed back at the hotel, and our friends, my son and I, had just stopped in a pharmacy.
Run to the bomb shelter, sweetie. Please hurry. I didn't hear the sirens at first, but the Israelis did. They're used to hearing these things. We ran to the back of the storeroom. It was a 12-foot by 24-foot windowless bomb shelter. My heart's pounding. Boom! Boom! I hear it and feel the percussion of the exploding bombs. I'm trying not to get sick. I look at my 13-year-old son and I think I'll never forgive myself if something happens to him.
That's an excerpt from a speech I gave to the Orange County Jewish Bar Association. It was the first, but not the last time we had to run to a bomb shelter. Our adventure and my transformation is also the subject of my book, Blasted from Complacency, A Journey from Terror to Transformation in Israel. There is no chapter in a parenting book on what to do when a war starts and you're on a family vacation. Think touring extraordinary and sacred sites mixed with cowering in bomb shelters. I'm still trying to get over the Jewish guilt of taking my son to war for his bar mitzvah present. The impact of being human targets helped me understand the plight of Israelis living like this, and it also made me want to work on peace. How Israel is often described on the news is not what I'd seen with my own eyes. And I felt Palestinian parents also preferred their children playing safely in their backyards. The missiles exploded just near enough to blow apart my world as I knew it, forever changing me. And you'd never recognize my life today with what it was like then. I believe I found my life's purpose. Well, hello everybody. This is Penny ST with Peace with Penny. Today I'll be interviewing Bruce Shaffer, a photographer who uses photography workshops to build connections between Israelis and Palestinians. In his youth photography classes, Bruce creatively uses cameras as a point of connection between his Hebrew and Arabic-speaking students in Israel and in the West Bank, who live in separate and conflicting communities. He instructs them to maximize what they have in common, their eyes and their hearts. Students work on assignments that require rediscovering their environment, seeing people in it from new angles, re-envisioning their future, and then sharing their findings with each other. These are footsteps in a peaceful direction for the next generation. Amen. And remember, if you missed any of the episodes of Peace with Penny, they're on Penny STEE, like my last name.com, under podcasts, or the Peace with Penny Facebook page. Bruce, welcome.
Thank you, Penny. Hello, it's good to be with you.
Good to have you. So just to get right in it, have you always enjoyed photography? Can you tell us about how you've been involved with photography in your life?
Well, my father was a photographer, a hobbyist photographer. He had a pretty good eye. And then all three of my children were artists of one form or fashion of another, and are. Two of them were heavily into photography. So it went father, children, and then circled back to me.
I know, Bruce, that you retired as a lawyer. Do you consider your work with NGOs an extension of your interest in fighting for justice, or does it come from a different reason? And if so, what?
Well, I think like most people, I've been blessed with a pretty strong sense of fairness. And, you know, that may have inspired going into legal work. But I know that it's in the work that I do with the youth, with the Palestinian and Israeli kids. And I think I've found that work just sort of activates that inner sense of fairness that, as with most people, we're blessed with.
So how did you get interested in Israel? What made you go there?
Like you, Penny, it started with a family trip. And on that first family trip some decades ago, I was really taken by the place. It really touched my soul, and it became just really felt a natural connection and attraction that just grew deeper and deeper over the years. And I continued to see more and learn more, and just wanting to take in more and more and get to know more and more. And it's just been a progression to the point that, as I mentioned about 10 years ago, just began living there half time.
So you actually spend a number of months there as well as here in the United States, right?
Yeah, it's plus or minus in any given year, roughly half.
Have you always been interested in the Israeli and Palestinian interactions?
I think that it would be more accurate to say that I've always been interested in other cultures, and particularly Middle Eastern culture attracted and appealed to me. And I wanted to see that more. And that was the beginning of, being interested in Arabic culture in particular, and being able to go into Arabic places and find opportunities for that. And it just all started to fit together.
Now, I believe you're Jewish, and I was kind of curious how the Palestinian kids react to that. Is it something that comes up usually, or?
Sure, it's a situation where in the first class, it's, hello, I'm Jewish.
Yeah, right. But
it definitely, I think it's fairly obvious, but it also comes up directly in various contexts as I indicate my familiarity with certain things. And if we're talking about holidays and in connection with language, it comes out as part of my identity, yes.
So what NGOs have you worked with?
Wow. Either as doing photography or various other support work, or doing these kinds of photography youth programs. I've worked with the Roots. I've worked with Maxom Watch. I've worked with Tiyul Richla. I don't know if these are familiar to you or your
Yes. Well, to me, yes, but not necessarily the viewers. So a lot of great organizations.
A little bit with Tajir, his organization Encounter. That was one of my entry points into all of this. And
yeah, Ali Abu Awad, who founded Tajir, was my entry point as well with Rabbi Hanan Schlesinger when they were talking about Roots when they came to the U.S. in 2015. So Ali holds a special place in my heart. So I believe that your classes promote peace by bringing together Israelis and Palestinians, yet you prefer not to use that term. Why?
Penny, I'm interested in moving the needle, period. I'm not interested in having a title, peace worker, peace activist. I'm not terribly wanting to get bogged down in terms and in a word. But in my experience, I'm finding that peace worker, peace activist, besides me not knowing what does peace mean, what does any particular person in any context mean by that, but some of these phrases, again, peace worker, peace activist, there's a lot of baggage associated with them that I don't find particularly helpful in expanding the population of who I want to reach. Those phrases are, can be a non-starter to connecting and to getting conversation going. So I'm not, I would prefer to consider myself a connection worker. I'm connecting people to themselves and to their others. My broad goal among Israelis and Palestinians is to generate acceptance of each other in order to ultimately be able to share this land between the river and the sea. And what that sharing arrangement ultimately looks like, I leave up to the peoples, whether that's driven from the top or from the bottom. But I have come to believe that without acceptance, nothing's really going to take hold. So that's what I'm working on, is trying to generate that acceptance that will ultimately allow people to share this land in the manner that they determine.
You could have easily chosen working with the local Parks and Rec kids. Why such a stressful group, Israelis and Palestinians?
Well, you're right. These issues are not necessarily unique to that part of the world, to Israel and Palestine. We have, they're unique in the context that they're found in, but the core issues we could find in the US, and in other countries as well. So I guess it goes back to, again, to something in my core, something having to do with being Jewish. It's a natural and easy connection for me. And as I mentioned, I've come to live there half or more of the year, and it's a fit. It's just a good fit. Everyone needs to find what's the good fit for themselves in the work that they're going to do.
So how are the classes structured?
You mean, what do they look like?
Yeah, how do you, you have, your class lasts for at least some of them a year, as I understand it,
Okay.
or quite a long time, and different classes are structured differently depending on what group you're with, between, say, Roots and the museum that you work with.
If we were to focus the discussion a little bit on those two venues, the program that I do at the Museum of Islamic Art is for high school students in Jerusalem. It's for East Jerusalem Palestinian high school students who are, by and large, not citizens of the state, but they are residents of Jerusalem, and for Jewish Israeli students living in West Jerusalem. That program goes throughout the year, or throughout the school year, meets once a week for about 3 hours per session, 12 students, and we're blessed to be able to have a wonderful facility there, the museum itself, to work within, and we're also able to work outside, take field trips, go on walks, and any given class session will be roughly divided in time between some just hi, we're here, we're back, just kind of some connection work, and then we'll be working on our assignment for the session, and then we'll often take perhaps the third part of the class to be reviewing work that was done the previous week or at home or whatever. The class that I do with Roots, which is in the West Bank, is once a week. Those are younger students, usually about 10 to 14 years old. And we do about 8 sessions, and then we'll start another program. And those classes are about 90 minutes each. We're working with younger kids and shorter attention span and all of that. And again, it'll start with regrouping. I can drill down on these nuts and bolts if you'd like, and then assignment, and then looking at pictures.
Speaking of looking at pictures, I think this is probably a great place to look at some. Do you agree?
Sure. So we have a wonderful group of students. I try to get them very active and moving about. Getting at things from different angles and from different perspectives is a big part of what we do, so that they're seeing things, opening their eyes, opening their hearts, Think of photography as the mother of all metaphors. We want to look at things from different perspectives, from different angles. Let's get up close. Let's focus. And let's look around in our immediate environment and at each other and at our communities and our world, and try to really get inside not pass by the obvious, look closely at what we walk along every day, see beauty in ordinary things, find the light, create with it. I love pictures where I don't know what it is, where they've taken an object and bringing it to me and bringing it to the class in an entirely different way so that we don't know what it was that they were photographing. And we also have the opportunity to go into each other's neighborhoods.
Gee, when you said that, I was laughing to myself because I thought all this time I didn't know when I took a picture that I can't tell what it is. It was a good thing.
Well, indeed, depending on what you're trying to do. And with all of this, we're trying to get them, we're trying to, as I said, open our eyes, open our hearts, see things in different ways, from different angles, from different perspectives. Why? With a goal toward questioning the assumptions. Questioning the assumptions of that can cause us to really be in stuck places.
Can you stop that at that photo? Do you
This
know
one
how
here?
to? Yeah. I was just curious, what is that?
I don't remember. I do remember we were on a walk, and I imagine this is a sign or a board that someone painted, and another student photographed one of the students looking at it, reading it. But apart from that, it speaks for itself.
Right.
And certainly speaks to common teenage experiences.
Oh,
And
this is a great photo. You want to stop at that one and talk about it?
Well, this is just a picture that someone took. We have an exhibition at the end of each session. So the students' works are shown on the wall. And this is true with any venue that I'm working in. And they have an opportunity to each get up and talk about their pictures, talk about the experience in the class, what they enjoyed, what they didn't enjoy, what they hoped to get out of it, what they got out of it, what they didn't get out of it. I encourage them to be really open about all of that. And of course, there's gifts and certificates. Family and friends are invited and welcome to come and do. And it's just a really wonderful end to the program. And that's a sampling of, as I said, we're able to get out into the street, and you can see that we're really trying to bend things and get into the extraordinary, get into the character and soul of the students when they're photographing each other, so they can really express themselves and learn about each other, which is not an easy thing to do, but photography can really help with that.
I'll ask a question.
Sure.
Okay, Bruce, I'm curious. You said they have a display of their photos at the end of each session. So they come with their pictures already blown up, ready for display? I mean, you don't print them together, do you?
No, I take care of I or assistants or staff. We do the printing.
Ah, okay. And each of them has their own good camera?
No, I support for the younger kids. I supply the cameras, and at the museum, we have a set of cameras that we use.
Great, wonderful.
This is the younger students out at the Roots program. And I'm going to slow this down so I can. So with the younger ones, we're wanting to try to get them together and getting them to know each other as soon as we can, getting them interacting. And then much the same, wanting them to go and really focus and see things in a different way and start combining and recombining what's out there in the environment and how they fit and see themselves in that environment and interacting with it in ways that express who they are. I really would like to grab the control. There, I can grab the control. And you're seeing one picture now?
The button or the doorknobs, I think.
Yeah. And I'm wanting them to see again the ordinary that's around them, wanting them to see the ordinary around them, and also to start seeing each other, wanting them to look for light and see the interplay between light and shadow. And how does this image relate to that image? How can they take this former one and find it somewhere else, such as in here. And the part about working with each other and really trying to capture that inner essence of each other rather than just doing selfies takes a lot of time and a lot of work. But that's how they really get to know each other, and that's how they really have opportunity to express themselves. And it takes time. And again, I'm wanting them to see the ordinary that they pass by all the time, and to find the light and the shadow and the beauty in those things. And to be expressive and to overexpress how they're feeling. You know, I'm always telling them that a lot of traditional peoples, indigenous peoples, religious peoples also often have an objection to being photographed because they feel like it's an attempt to steal their soul. And I tell the students, you know, you may think that's silly, but that's exactly what I want you to try to do. Capture their soul. So that's a brief run through.
I love, this is one of my favorite one. The one before this
Okay.
is one of my favorites for obvious reasons, I think, but.
Sure. Well, Roots uses this picture a lot in its promotional materials. We refuse to be enemies. It circles back into that whole conversation of acceptance of each other. Yeah, this was taken during the summer camp that Roots offered during, I don't know, they offer it annually, and I've worked a few of them, but that's when this one was taken.
Yeah, I think the small child playing in it also just it's a wonderful, wonderful picture.
So should I leave the screen share and we can resume our conversation?
Yeah, that sounds great.
You can look at more of those again if you'd like.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about.
Okay.
So
I'm here. I'm here and not in a hurry.
Okay. You say students work on assignments that demand rediscovering their environment, rethinking about the people in it, re-envisioning their future, and then share their findings with each other. What ultimately is your goal for these classes?
So, we've got a couple of goals here, okay? There's the macro goal that I mentioned, okay? Everything flows from the macro goal of bringing people together in service of creating acceptance of each other so that we can come to a place of, at some point, being able to share this land. There's a lot of components to that, okay, that are outside the frame of this conversation. One of those, well, having said that, I won't go to it right now.
Okay.
So that's the macro. Okay, so what am I doing with these students toward that end of acceptance? One is I'm bringing them together with cameras through photography as a common language, as a common medium, to allow them to come together in a neutral space with a language that's new to both of them. We have a big problem in that with Hebrew and Arabic and the respective sides not speaking each other's language. That's pretty big to resolution of conflict when we don't have a common language. And learning each other's spoken language is a trend in Israel and Palestine today, thank goodness. But I'm using an art medium to bring them together neutrally and to use this activity to bring them together, to get them to know each other, doing the same thing at the same time, at the same place. That's, believe it or not, that's not normative, particularly in the West Bank. The opportunities for that are extremely limited. So we're using that activity as a medium. And then to get back to what I was saying before, photography is a wonderful, you put that camera between you and something, and rather than it being a blocker, it's an eye opener. It's a tool that really allows us to open our eyes and in some ways to open our hearts. The more we're doing it and the better we see, and they can see themselves and they can see each other and they can see their community and their neighbors and their neighborhoods and their environment and the world in fresh ways. We're really slowing down. That's a key. Let's just slow down. Let's put the phones away. Let's put everything away.
That alone is with that age group is a feat.
Let's, as I said, look at the world through a different lens, from another angle, through a different perspective. And as I said, then we can open new views and question the assumptions that have, got us into a lot of stuckness. Hey, it's Pesach, let's get out of Mitzrayim. In Jewish spiritual terms, the Eish Kodesh, the Rabbi Kalanimus Kalman Shapira said, teach yourself to watch, to gaze, to contemplate, to become a person who seeks the divine presence everywhere. And whether that kind of language speaks to someone or not, to look deeper, to look at that life, inner vibrancy, source, whatever you want to call it, to find that commonality is what we're trying to do here. I don't know if I answered your question. I don't even remember what your question was.
Oh, let's move on. There's so many extremes of, negative extremes of emotions, fear, hate, etc. When with the two sides. How do you get them to acknowledge their humanity with each other? Is it do you set them up just by working together, or do you talk about it? Or is it more subtle that it just happens as they work together?
Sure. I mean, we know it's more subtle. It's a hope for outcome. I mean, that is, part of this macro goal of acceptance. And we can't have, okay, today's lesson will be acknowledgement of each other's humanity.
Right.
But hopefully that is what we're facilitating by having extended opportunity to be with each other and working out something in common that does, by its very nature, the subject matter of the activity require deeper explanation, getting beneath the surface. It's not easy. It's not easy to show in the pictures and in a limited time.
Right.
And we've wrestled with that, but another time we'll look at pictures more closely, and I can explain that better.
Now, are these students, we have Israelis and we have Palestinians, is using a camera something new to the students, or some students and not others, or one side and not the other?
Yeah, yes and no. So I'll try to keep it simple. And I'm going to break it down a little bit because there is some difference here between the Jerusalem students and the West Bank students, okay? The Jerusalem students all have cell phones with cameras, okay? But they have deployed those cameras for the most part to just do selfies and cheese pictures, let's just smile. So they haven't really used those cameras as tools for the kind of work that I've been talking about. Okay, and in the Jerusalem program, we have pretty high-end cameras that the museum was able to get funding to purchase after we did the program a couple of times and found that, wow, the older kids were really taken by it and they wanted real cameras. So we have 12 very nice DSLR cameras that we use there. In the West Bank, most all of the Jewish Israeli students have a cell phone with a camera. Less so among the West Bank Palestinian students, but I don't want them using those cell phone cameras anyway because it's just a distraction and they're not uniform, so they all have a different type. And once you got the phone in your hand, you're not doing photography anymore. So we have 12 small digital cameras that we use in that program. And yeah, it's a new experience for them, to answer your question, to use a camera as a camera for doing something other than, by and large, taking selfies.
So they've gone through your program and now it's time for the exhibit. Mm-hmm. And they get to invite family and friends, and I believe you use 4 of their photos and they get to discuss it. So what's your impression of how the students react to the opportunity, and what kind of comments?
Sure. Well, they really rise to the occasion, and because they have been at it for a while, and we have spent a couple of weeks getting ready for the exhibit. Of course, it comes with a party and food and invitations and all of this. But beyond the frills, there is a lot of satisfaction that they show in their work. There is a lot of spirit among them as a group, with each other. The classes become, the sessions get pretty supportive of one another over the course of the program, particularly in the museum class, because they've got the whole school year to get to know each other. And they're pretty excited about it. And some of them are real show-offs and some of them are really shy, but they're able to pull it off and express their gratitude and that, some of the goals have been met and that they are seeing the world a little differently, or at least asking questions about it. And of course, they'll have family there, they'll have friends there, so they like that.
Do you know if any of the friendships that evolve last? Do you? I know that some of the kids, will go from one of your programs and want to continue on in another program, etc.
Yeah.
Kinds of relationships,
That's
or do you?
That's a good question, and I don't know, but I'm going to guess that for the most part, that's the end of it. The systems and structures and culture that they live in makes the ongoingness of that really, really challenging. They're not going to come out of this as best friends forever, and they're not going to come out of this with, I don't know, we've never tried it. Maybe it would be possible to have reunions or something. In the Roots program, I know that they'll come out of that, and many of them will go on to other youth programs that are available to them. So that's a good sign. Among the Jerusalem high school students, whether some of them, and I assume you're meaning across the cultural barrier divide here,
Right.
but
Right.
they maintain contact. I'm going to guess probably not. But as I said, their lives and their societies and there's everything from cultural and social locks to that, to when we're out in the West Bank, actual physical, improbabilities to continuing that. That said, one of the goals here is, if that opportunity occurs, if that chance encounter occurs, that's potentially stressful, that's potentially violent, that's potentially whatever. I like to hope, I do hope and believe that this opportunity that they've had, may cause some pause in that situation, and some recollection of, hey, I know that person, or I know somebody like that person, or I was with that person, or I was with someone like that person, and I've learned that they're a human being with a dignity and a soul, and with the same wants and aspirations as I have, and maybe we get some diffusing in that situation.
Yeah, it sounds like it's at least a little bit of sweetness in this ugliness. One thing that I noted, that you had started this during the summer of 2014, which is the summer that changed my life when it came to all of this. And you were helping at the summer camp for Roots, and with the bombings and everything that was going on, I was curious, what was that like for you with the kids in this new program?
Well, the spring summer of 2014 was, particularly, acute time. Having said that, this conflict, for lack of a better word at the moment, is always at some level between simmer and boil. but that wasn't a particularly acute time. There was the kidnapped murder
Right.
of three. I hope I've got that number correct.
Yes,
Three young Israelis in the West Bank.
correct.
There was the horrific revenge lynching murder of a young
Right.
Arab boy in East Jerusalem.
Hmm.
And then we had another episode of the serial wars between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. So it was particularly stressful, and we did have a summer camp going on, and that was, I think, the first time. I had been doing work with Roots prior to that, but I think that was when we introduced photography for the first time, I think.
Yeah.
But we went along, and everyone more or less continued to participate. We had to make some adjustments. We were going to we had a bus to take the kids to the sea, and we kind of had to change our location to go further north to be slightly further out of the range of fire. But we carried on.
Yeah, that's what I found is because it is just part of their life, that is what happens, that people move on to the extreme that even I found when we were cowering in the bomb shelters and they said you have to wait 10 minutes till Iron Dome blows up the missiles in the sky and the shrapnel falls down to the ground. And, some Israelis don't wait the 10 minutes because they want to move on with their day. And of course, we waited till every last second. But, we were kind of shocked to see some people leaving anyway. Are the students primarily coming because they want to learn photography, because they're curious about working with the other? Or I know in Roots, some of their parents told them to attend. So, but what in general, what causes them to show up?
That's a fair question. Look, these are students, whether it's the high school students. Well, let's start with the high school students. They're obviously self-selecting into this opportunity to learn with a group of students that they're not usually in contact with other than in passing. There's certainly places in Jerusalem where Jewish Israelis and Palestinian students are passing, have some nominal contact, and even more, particularly in music venues and things of that nature. But to get into an intensive ongoing program with each other, they're self-selecting into that. In the West Bank, they're younger students. The program is obviously promoted as an opportunity to come together with with the other community that you're not having much contact with. And sure, these are 10 to 14-year-olds, so their families, their parents are shepherding them into that. Okay, so we have self-selecting parents who are putting who are wanting their kids to be in that. That said, for all of the participants and the participants' parents, this is a courageous act. This is not normative. It is against the grain, and any of the participants or their families are, at some risk of pushback from other members of their families and communities.
So I know that there's a transportation component to getting the kids there. What is that about? That you supply.
Well, transportation always challenging. I mean, for the program in Jerusalem, it's not that big a deal. The kids take buses there or walk there or whatever. In the West Bank, we have, transportation. First of all, we've got traffic is huge. And the location of the facility in the West Bank is just a couple hundred meters from a junction that does see a fair amount of occasional violence. Is that an oxymoron? A fair amount of occasional? I don't know. And so that can cause, the intersection to be shut down. That can cause parents from either community to not bring their kids to the program because you don't want to be going through at that time. It can cause temporary checkpoints to go up, and that's obviously a big discouragement to Palestinians to have to go through a checkpoint. Checkpoints create traffic. So yeah, transportation can be an issue, is an issue.
And as I understand it, recruitment is very different between the Palestinians and the Israeli kids. Can you talk a little bit about that? I know that's a key to the whole program.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do the recruitment, but recruitment is not simple because again, this is, somewhat against the grain. Those doing the recruiting, the program leaders have to be something, akin to, a basketball coach in North America. You gotta get in there with the parents in the living room and you want to, recruit into this program. I think what you're also wondering about is, in the Palestinian community, as within Israeli society, there's a lot of divisions, and not everyone wants to be with everyone. And so when we're working with, a small percentage of the population at large that wants to participate in these things, and then we have to deal with divisions within community, between rural and urban, between religious and non-religious, between we have men and women or boys and girls issues, and who can be in mixed classes and who can't be in mixed classes, and all of this. It does make it challenging, and we need to know from the beginning of each session, okay, what's the target group here?
Do the kids seem to look at it as the classes as a respite from the conflict, or does the conflict naturally come into the class?
I don't know if they view it as a respite or not. In the West Bank, I want to be accurate. The Palestinian kids have less opportunity for after-school programs, so it's certainly a change of pace and an opportunity. The Jewish Israeli kids, the settler kids, have more opportunity for after-school stuff. I could be wrong about that, so I do want to be careful, but I think that's generally the case. So whether they see it as respite or not, I don't know, but we certainly have occasions where that greater conflict does invade our space. And although we don't want that to happen, that's the world we're working in, and so we try to make the most of those situations. So I'll give you just two examples. I had my museum class on a field trip to another museum, and after we had visited that other museum, the students were just goofing around and playing in a park, and they were approached by the neighbors of the park. The park was in a particular community, who very pointedly said to the Palestinian kids, "You can't be here. This isn't your park."
Oy.
And I'm not going to go through the whole how it unfolded and what we did, but we did leave, and at some point, and that's, yeah, I call that violence, that psychological violence being inflicted on people, and that presents then an opportunity for the class in the following week to to process that. Out at Roots, there was an occasion where, as the students were arriving, so some were there, some were arriving, there was an incident where there was an attempt to ram people standing at a bus stop, civilians waiting for the bus, soldiers standing there as well. The person that attempted to ram with their car was shot and killed. And so this is like seen, heard, whatever. And it's an opportunity that was handled very beautifully by the Palestinian co-leader of the program to sit with all of them and say, look, this is why we're here. We are not them. We are pursuing a different way. And let's carry on with the work. And a little more to it than that. So yeah, we are certainly operating within that milieu.
Wow.
But I think you asked about respite. So is it respite? There's never complete respite in that neck of the woods for anyone, is my experience of it, my view of it.
So heavy for kids that age to have to deal with, for anyone, but especially kids. It's a rough way to live. And I am a little bit curious of you said that the Palestinian partner, well, if I could go back a little, I believe you use an interpreter because the two sides don't speak the same language. Was that true?
Who speaks what language? Who speaks which languages varies between whether we're speaking about the Jerusalem program or the West Bank program. But suffice it to say that in any group that I have, not everyone speaks any one language that we can simply work in one language. My preference is, my Hebrew is probably sufficient to conduct the class, but I want to be positioned as in the middle. I want to be the medium. And so I prefer to work in English. And then we have interpreters who will translate into Hebrew and Arabic as needed. Again, I'm making the art the medium. I'm making the photography the medium. They're learning terms, languages, phrases that they're not familiar with in any language. So,
yeah, it just
once I'm working in Arabic or Hebrew, I believe that I've compromised my position as the neutral facilitator, leader, guide, whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm still a little bit, well, a lot curious actually about what happened. You said the Palestinian leader handled it nicely, but I'm sure a lot of people have never been in that kind of situation. Were you dealing with the Israeli kids at that point, or I was kind of curious how that was handled.
Yeah, the students from all the students were either there or coming there. This is not new. So
right. I mean,
it's just and so I don't want to be, as I said, one doesn't welcome these incidents and occasions, but they're not new at all. And so you use them as opportunities.
It's a very harsh life, I would imagine. You've talked before about working with these populations as being very emotional, and that many what I would call peacemakers have burned out. They get burned out by it. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you do to keep yourself grounded with these intense situations?
Meditation.
Yay.
How do I keep myself grounded?
Or from, not burning out, because dealing with these situations is
Yeah,
very.
I mean, the jury's out. Well, I hope not to. I think there's a number of things that are helping me and would help. One is, and it has to do with how the work's affected me, what I've learned, kind of my list of, what I see as job qualifications, all of which goes to, how to continue to carry on and to hopefully avoid the burnout. The work requires humility. You can't come to this thinking, I know the answers. The more I learn, the more I know I don't know. I can give you a big, for example, on that one, going all the way back to where we started with this question of peace. Focusing on peace, we want peace, we want peace, we want peace, doesn't acknowledge the need of the Palestinian people, which is rights. Ask a Palestinian person if they want peace, and it's like, sure, who doesn't? But not peace without rights. And that's something that's, really important to learn and to understand and to come to this work. If you're going to work with both populations, to understand that it's not simply about peace. There's a number of roads to peace that don't satisfy the rights that Palestinians need. The Israeli want of peace is motivated by security concerns. And that simply doesn't cut it in terms of ending the conflict for the Palestinian people. So a number of ways you can get to peace without rights, and that's not going to end the conflict. So that's something about humility and thinking. I just brought that as one example of thinking when you don't know. There's so much to learn. Gratitude for the opportunity to engage with these peoples who are, so passionate and dedicated to this part of the world and to where they live, and who are so bound to each other. It's a real privilege. It's a real blessing to have the opportunity to work with them. That kind of helps you keep going. You have to have, integrity, to be open to other people's stories. If you're locked into your own story, you're not going to last. And it has a lot to do with learning acceptance too, is to have those opportunities to allow myself to hear other stories and to examine my own as well, without having to give up my own. But you definitely have to be open to the other stories, the other narratives. Compassion keeps one going in this work. Of course, it's really important. But perhaps even more so than compassion is, honoring the dignity of everyone is another key to being able to continue because once you become non-compassionate, once you forget that dignity, you can start spiraling down into cynicism and despair. And I guess also, endurance, resilience, learning to know and to respect, one's personal capacity and limits. That's really important. This road is really paved with the broken spirits of a lot of blank workers that have come before. And so you do need to know, your limits and respect that, and take the breaks and meditate or do whatever you need to do.
So did you learn anything about yourself from doing this kind of work?
Well, I'm still learning, but I think I am learning that there's a lot of those things that I mentioned, that I learned, that I do need to learn to ramp up my my humility and those other qualities that I mentioned of gratitude and integrity, and to learn about my endurance and resilience. I learned that didn't know that I would enjoy this, and I enjoy it.
What's your favorite thing about it?
What's my favorite thing about it? My favorite thing about it, I guess, is that for all of as hard as the work is, and as frustrating as the work is, there is an amount of joy and satisfaction that comes with the work. And I'm going to make your day here, Penny.
Oh,
I'm going to tell you that when you are one of a number of, and the number is many, many, many people working in this realm, that there is a camaraderie, that there is a community, and on a good day, Penny, on a good day, you can even see and feel and smell and hear and taste and touch and experience a little bit of peace.
amen.
May it grow.
You're right. You made my day. Bruce, do you get feedback from your students? And if so, what do they say?
Sure, Penny, we get a lot of feedback all along the way on how they're feeling about the class, how they're doing with the class. I think what I would want to share with you is a couple of notes that I've received at the end of the classes. Really, I think, sum up a lot of what you've been asking about. So, for example, from the class at the museum, I have a lovely note that says, stand still, slow down, focus, look closely. These are just some of the things we learn from you. These are some of the things that are most helpful in life. Photography is not just a technique, it's aesthetics. It's a process of thought, it's spontaneity. It's capturing the fastest thing, life and living beings. We'd like to thank you for your patience and wisdom and humor. It was a pleasure. Sincerely, and then signed by the students. And from the group in the West Bank, from the Roots group, Bruce, with your eyes, hands, heart, dedication, creativity, flexibility, humility, drive, and love, we are all blessed. Each thank you beyond words. And then also signed by all the by all the kids. So, yeah, among other things, you get feedback that keeps you going.
So I know just before we go, there's two things. One, I know that you're getting together a new project that you might want to mention, and then I'll ask you your last question, and then I'll close out the podcast. So what's this new great project you're working on?
In the fall, winter of a year and a half ago, I had the opportunity to work with a filmmaker from here in Boulder, Colorado. That's my other home where I'm speaking to you from at the moment. And we went and did a videography workshop for a group of Palestinian 20 and 30-something-year-olds, mostly college graduates, but really a demographic that really has a lot of hope, dream, vision, progress, and positive-oriented would-be upcoming civil society and civic leaders. And we taught them, or began to taught them, videography as a means of amplifying their voices, promoting their vision, taking their projects and endeavors to a wider audience. And so we're very happy to be going back for a week to do a very advanced course with them, and to also be making a video which they'll self-produce about themselves, that will really be showing and talking about the work that they're doing. And that's good news. That's, some of the organizations I had mentioned are very involved with one side or the other, and in Palestinian society and self-empowerment and social improvement. And young people are the future. You're not going to get me into talking about elections and politics and whatnot, but we need change agents and changes in leadership, and that's what hopefully can move us along faster, farther to that mutual acceptance, shared land, resolution, peace, whatever you want to call it. We have to invest in young people.
Does this project have a name?
It's called Voices of Palestine's Future, is the working title.
Okay, and for our last question, believe it or not, if you were speaking to the people of the world, what would the message be that you'd want them to know about your work with these communities that is important for them to know?
Get into it, or get into something like it, wherever you are. As I said, the issues aren't unique. The issues need a lot of work, and if you're so inclined, the work is rewarding, it's joyful, and very satisfying, and hopefully you'll be doing your own part to further things a little bit, to move that needle a little bit, and that's all that's asked of each person. So find your cause and get involved.
Thanks so much, Bruce, for sharing your experiences with us. Next week at 11 a.m., of course, Pacific time, we'll be speaking with Khaled Abu Awad. He is among the foremost figures in the Palestinian community working toward peace and reconciliation between Palestinians and Israelis. He's been part of founding 3 groundbreaking organizations and has been awarded various international prizes for his projects. Khalid's family has been greatly affected by the conflict, which has shaped his beliefs and actions. You may remember me writing about his brother Ali, who I've known since 2015. His family stories in my book, Blasted from Complacency, A Journey from Terror to Transformation in Israel. Ali and his mother were jailed during the first Intifada for extended periods, and Khalid himself spent a total of 18 months in confinement. In 2000, his brother Yusuf was killed by Israeli soldiers. 2 years later, another brother, Saeed, died 10 days after being wounded, and his son, Mayad, was seriously wounded and left handicapped. In 2009, his son, Muhannad, was arrested and jailed for several years, and Muhannad was jailed again at the end of 2015 and was released in July 2017. With everything that he has faced, Khalid remains dedicated to nonviolence and communication. He says, to anyone who says that it is only by war or by force or by eradicating the other side that rights can be won or dreams achieved, I say that is not so. For one side cannot eradicate the other. We cannot kill their dreams, and they are unable to kill ours. We must divide this place among us all and live in peace, or all of us will live in hell. I hope you will join us to listen to this incredible Palestinian peace activist who, despite his personal history, continues to keep the flame of peace burning in his heart and in his actions. To our listeners today and those listening to the recording later, thank you, and may you live in peace, shalom, and salam.